Dragon Ball, I am a digitized Saiyan. Chapter 31. On the boy's shoulder, he also carried a long travel crossbody bag. After carefully examining the young man's appearance for a while, Yingqi shook his head with a smile. This boy is so different from the super lucky person in his memory. No matter how you look at it, it's not the same person. It should just be the same name and surname. The tall and strong man and the slightly dark boy sat down across the wine table next to Yingqi. When he put the crossbody bag on his shoulder on the chair, the slightly dark boy immediately asked, "Master, do you have the confidence to win tomorrow's competition?" The tall and strong man said confidently, "Stinky boy, this needs to be said. I'm going to be the champion tomorrow." Hearing the conversation between the master and apprentice, Yingqi froze slightly. The profession seems to be on the right track. Just as Yingqi was paying attention to the pair of masters and apprentices again, he suddenly sensed a relatively powerful chi that was slowly moving down the long street. This chi is only a little weaker than that of the turtle immortals. Could it be that the crane immortal is here? Yingqi looked out the window in surprise, but saw a thin man wearing a peach-colored cheongsam. He has high cheekbones, an eagle-hooked nose, and a mustache on his lips. But the most striking thing is the scarlet killing word embroidered on his heart. It turned out to be a peach white. Dao Bai walked in vain, and suddenly turned into Yuelai restaurant. It didn't take long. He went down the stairs to a table next to Yingqi and sat down. Yingqi looked at him and smiled slightly. Dao Bai didn't say anything superfluous. Like a standard ruthless killer, his eyes were always staring straight ahead. Not for a while. The shopkeeper brought the food. Yingqi noticed that Dao Bai did not ask for wine, but directly ordered rice. He ate very quickly, and in just 3 minutes, he wiped out all 3 dishes, 1 soup, and 2 large bowls of rice. Dao Bai's movement naturally attracted the attention of Satan, the young man at the table next to him. Satan, who has a cheerful personality, as if he had discovered a new world, immediately whispered to the tall and strong man, "Master, look at the person next to you, his hairstyle is so funny." The tall and strong man who was feasting on pork chops in front of him couldn't help but move his eyes to Dao Bai, who had already stood up, and when he saw Dao Bai's back clearly, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Wow, that's funny. A big man actually wears braids that only girls have. And there's actually a bow on the braid," the tall man said with a smile and kept patting the table. Yingqi looked at Master Satan, who was madly dying, with a strange expression. He had now been fully convinced that the dark boy was Satan. He clearly remembered that Satan had a relationship with Dao Bai. And Satan's master was killed by Dao Bai because he laughed at Dao Bai's hairstyle. Sure enough, Dao Bai turned around expressionlessly. The tall and strong man noticed Dao Bai's unkind expression, and clenched his fist defiantly. "What?" The peach-white corner slanted, and directly raised his right hand. The next moment, a golden ray of energy burst out from his peach-white index finger, instantly penetrating the forehead of the tall and strong man, killing him. It's the signature skill of the crane immortal stream, the cave wave. Bang! The body of the tall man fell to the ground. Seeing this, Zhou Anqi, who had been eating quietly, screamed in fright. "You killed my master, I'll fight with you." The young Satan had tears on his face and rushed towards Dao Bai in desperation. It can be seen that his martial arts have a bit of a foundation. But, compared with the world's #1 killer, Dao Bai, it's a joke. Dao Bai didn't pay attention to him at all, and after killing people, he turned around directly and prepared to go downstairs. The young Satan ran in front of him, and he had already kicked Satan out of the way. "HMPH, I don't know if I'm alive or dead." Dao Bai snorted coldly and quickly went downstairs. The diners on the second floor rioted, and some people shouted that they had killed someone. Pasta and Lanfang both stood up. Lanfang looked at Dao Bai's back and said, "This person is too hateful." Pasta took Zhou Anqi's hands and comforted her in a whisper. Yingqi also stood up, glanced at Satan, who had obviously passed out, and naturally dispelled the idea of understanding. He turned to the 3 pastas and said, "Let's go." Quote. Lanfang immediately became excited, and her knuckles were pinched by her beat. "Brother Yingqi, do you want me to grab that person?" Yingqi shook his head with a smile. "Then you still need to practice for a while. Now you are a little worse than him." Quote. The four of them left the money for the meal on the table, and then took advantage of the chaos to leave the restaurant. Yingqi had completely locked in Tao Baibai's breath, and it didn't take long for him to catch up with Tao Baibai in the grove outside the capital. More precisely, it's Peach in vain and waiting for them. You're following me. Momobai's cold gaze fell on Yingqi. He had recognized Inki as the young man sitting at the table next to him. Yes, since I met you by coincidence, then I asked you to take us to meet the Crane Immortal by the way. Yingqi said calmly. What are you looking for my senior brother, what are you looking for him? Dao Baibai frowned. Of course, I asked him to learn boxing. Anything else, would the Crane Immortals do anything else? Inki asked rhetorically. I'm not free. I only kill people, I don't help find people. Find it yourself. Dao Baibai turned around directly. Yingqi smiled, I'm afraid this can't help you. Huh. Momo Baibai squinted at Yingqi. 3 minutes later, the blue nose and swollen peach white looked at Yingqi with a sneer. It's okay, I'm happy to take you to my senior brother. The moment he turned around, Dao Baibai shouted frantically in his heart. God, how can there be such a terrible master in this world? Quote. Thinking back to the battle just now, Momo Baibai couldn't believe it was real. The speed he was most proud of was a joke in front of this mysterious young man. And the speed of the mysterious young man's shot is not at all fast at all. Not even a shadow. What's even more terrifying is that he seems to be far from showing his true strength. It's just like playing. I really don't know what such a terrible master is looking for the Crane Immortal to do. Blessings and misfortunes are unpredictable. Senior brother, you can ask for more blessings for yourself. After all, I can't protect myself now. Dao Baibai sighed helplessly. Under the guidance of Dao Baibai, Yingqi finally met the Crane Immortals who had settled in a bamboo forest. The breeze blows and the green bamboo rustles, making the environment more quiet. The faint scent of bamboo wafts through the air. The martial arts hall of the Crane Immortal stream is hidden in the layers of bamboo branches. It's unbelievable. The Crane Immortals, who have a bad heart and a low character, would actually choose such a dusty and elegant place to live. When Yingqi, Pasta, Lan Fang, and Zhou Anqi were looking at the beautiful bamboo sea around them, Dao Baibai had already connected with the Crane Immortal who was standing at the door of the Crane Immortal Luwu Pavilion. Whispering in his ear. What? The Crane Immortal screamed out in faux puff, and while staring at Yingqi, cold sweat flowed down. He knows very well that the strength of this junior brother with the title of the world's #1 killer should be said to be on par with himself. Maybe even a little stronger because of his younger age. And this mysterious young man actually doesn't know how many times stronger than Dao Baibai. Does it not mean that he is also many times better than him? But how is this possible? The Crane Immortal believes that after so many years of hard practice, his strength has definitely reached half the level of his mentor Wu Taito. Doesn't that mean that the young man in front of him is much stronger than the martial arts master of a generation of martial arts masters? This is ridiculous. If it weren't for the miserable appearance of the peach-white face, blue nose and swollen face, the Crane Immortal really wondered if his junior brother was crazy or drunk, and was talking nonsense. However, the hard facts are in front of us. He couldn't believe it. Trying to adjust his mentality, the Crane Immortal put on a smiling face and greeted Yingqi. Yo, what kind of wind is it today? Inki. Yingqi really admires the ability of the Crane Immortals. A person who is more than a few hundred years old can still bow down and be small in front of him, a young man who is only 21 years old. With this cheek, it is definitely not for nothing that he can compete with the Turtle Immortals, the god of martial arts, in these hundreds of years. The four of Yingqi followed the Crane Immortal and Dao Baibai into the martial arts hall. There are more than a dozen disciples standing in the courtyard, Tianjin rice of the descendants of the Sanmu people, and dumplings that will never grow forever. It can be seen that the Crane Immortals are not very expensive to guide their disciples. Seeing the master and uncle coming in, more than a dozen disciples, including Tianjin rice and dumplings, hurriedly came over to greet them. The Crane Immortals even asked them to perform disciple salutes to Yingqi. This couldn't help but make Yingqi even more speechless. The six of them walked through the courtyard of the white sand and walked into the interior of the martial arts hall, and the wooden planks on the ground were wiped quite clean, and the indoor basketball court of Shanghai University. The four of Yingqi and the two of them stood opposite each other, and they were supposed to kneel and sit. But Yingqi was not used to it, so he just stood up and spoke. Crane Immortal, I have always been good friends with Teacher Wushan, so I know very well what kind of character you are. However, it's none of my business, and you don't need to be nervous. I'm here this time. As I said to your junior brother Dao Bye before, I came here to seek art. Quote. The distinction between good guys and bad guys is actually not that important to Yingqi. Frieza, the Emperor of the Universe, is so evil. After arriving at the Great Council of Forces, hasn't he still been whitewashed? As a time traveler with a normal worldview and values, there are only two ways to divide the characters in the Dragon Bead world in Yingqi's mind. One is whether he can be drawn into his own camp, and the other is whether he is valuable to himself. Right now, the Crane Immortals are very valuable to themselves. Therefore, even if he is a big villain with pus on the top of his head and sores on the soles of his feet, Yingqi will not kill him casually. The Crane Immortal coughed involuntarily twice, and explained awkwardly, Lord Yingqi, don't listen to that old fool to reverse right and wrong, in fact, Yingqi raised his hand and motioned for the Crane Immortal to stop, no need to say more. Then he continued, it's the same as Teacher Wu Tian's. I can't be a teacher from you. But as compensation, for every trick you teach me a trick of the Crane Immortal stream, I will compensate you with 10 million souls. It's not a lot of money, but it's also my heart. Please say yes. The four of Yingqi stayed in the Crane Immortal Martial Arts Pavilion. At the beginning, the Crane Immortals still had the true strength of Yingqi intentionally or unintentionally. Yingqi naturally did as he wished, and in front of the many disciples of the Crane Immortal stream, he burst out a little. The terrifying aura like a hurricane instantly subdued all the people in the Crane Immortal Martial Arts Pavilion, including the Crane Immortals. Tianjin Fan, the strongest disciple of the Crane Immortals, regards Yingqi as an idol. He couldn't imagine that a human could be so strong. And the first time I saw Yingqi's powerful Crane Immortals, I became more attentive to Yingqi. Not only did he do his best in coaching skills, but he also insisted on pushing away the 10 million Sony compensation proposed by Yingqi. It's certainly not that he's crazy. Lack of money to spend, he can ask his junior brother for nothing. As the #1 killer in the world, he has a reward of 100 million for a random order. However, if the relationship between the evil and Yingqi is evil, it is called more than worth the loss. His nemesis, the Turtle Immortal, has a good relationship with Yingqi. What if one day his brain is pumped and he comes up with a plan for Yingqi to help deal with him? Yingqi is the real world's #1 master. If they really want to deal with them, they don't even have room to fight back. Therefore, it is natural that Yingqi owes himself a favor, which is the safest. It is better to have friendship and bonds between the two sides, but also to win over the Turtle Immortals. That could even use Yingqi to kill the old rival in turn. Of course, Yingqi didn't know the mental activity of the Crane Immortals, but he was happy to see this happening right now. After all, he can also learn the most important bottom-of-the-box killer in his mind as soon as possible. Someone to guide by hand, and learn skills by yourself, the efficiency is completely different. In just 2 days, Yingqi mastered the Cave Wave. For another 3 days, Yingqi mastered the Sun Fist. Another day, Inch mastered the volleyball boxing. 3 days later, Yingqi mastered the Qigong Cannon. In another 5 days, Yingqi mastered the 4 Demon Fists. This skill is the most fundamental reason why he came to visit the Crane Immortal this time. The 4 Demon Fists look ordinary. It is to grow 2 other arms out of the body. For a true top master, there isn't much difference between 4 hands and 2. After all, Qi is the most fundamental. Inch doesn't deny it. But there is another extension after the 4 Demon Fists, and that is the 4 Body Fists. In a few years, Tianjin Fan will create a 4 Body Fist on the basis of the 4 Demon Boxing. It is true that Tianjin Raya's 4 Body Fist still has weaknesses, and it will divide the main strength into 4. It is tantamount to weakening oneself in disguise. But that doesn't mean that the 4 Body Punch is not good, and there is still a lot of room for improvement. Later, didn't Sharu succeed in improving it, so that the clone also has half the strength of the body? Therefore, Yingqi has every reason to believe that the 4 Body Fist should eventually be improved to the same strength, and may even evolve into 8 Body Fist, 16 Body Fist, and so on. Once Yingqi has done that step, when facing the enemy, he directly conjures up 4 or more identical bodies, with a pseudo-immortal body, and unlimited physical strength. He comes out to meet the enemy. How beautiful should the picture be? And if he breaks through the Super Saiyan Blue realm, it is estimated that it will be no problem to break his wrist with infinite Zamas, right? After learning the 4 demon fists, Yingqi still stayed in the Crane Immortal Martial Arts Hall for more than a month. While communicating with the Crane Immortals to discuss the follow-up of the 4 demon fists, he also learned the last skill of the Crane Immortals at the bottom of the box. This trick is also the trick used by Yu Lin, the little sister of Tianjin Rice and Dumplings before the Power Conference. At that time, even the Turtle Immortals were successfully controlled. In order to curry favor with Yingqi, the Crane Immortals can be said to have made a bloody investment. This skill, he hasn't even taught the disciples of the Crane Immortal stream. Yingqi is not heartless, and before leaving the Crane Immortal Luwu Pavilion, he gave the Crane Immortal a clear promise. If he encounters any trouble in the future, he can help solve it once. The long-awaited thing finally came to fruition, and the Crane Immortal naturally smiled. A few days later, Yingqi and his party returned to the western capital again. Zhou Anqi has never seen such a bustling city, and he seems to be quite excited along the way. When she just left her gambling father, Zhou Liang, she was still very scared. But as she got along for 2 months, she found that Qi, Pasta, and Lan Fang were all rare good people. Naturally, they became closer. I also slowly regained my lively and lovely nature. That bear balloon is so fun. Rainbow marshmallows are so pretty. I want a bubble maker too. Lan Fang, who is playful and lively by nature, happens to form a pair of living treasures with her. The 2 of them kept shopping on their way to Dr. Brive's house. Ji and Pasta followed them. He looked at the 2 of them with a smile on his face. Pasta suddenly turned her head and said to Inch with some concern, "We haven't been to see the Brives for so long, they won't blame us, right?" Quote. Yingqi smiled and didn't say anything. Dr. Brive's house. Reunited with Inch and his party, Mrs. Brive was first pleasantly surprised, and then grabbed Pasta to complain, bluntly said that Pasta and Lan Fang are really interesting. Pasta hurriedly apologized, and told all the experiences of more than 2 years, and Lady Brive, who could only stay at home most of the time, was very happy. After all the specialties from all over the world were brought out, Mrs. Brive's resentment almost dissipated. Several women made an appointment to go to the hot spring together in the afternoon. Naturally, Inch was also complained a few words by Mrs. Brive, and of course he would not take it to heart. Mrs. Brive said this, apparently thinking of him as a true friend. With a confession, Inch came out of the pile of women. Go straight to Dr. Brive. And the latter is drinking tea in the garden and petting the cat. Seeing Qi, Dr. Brive approached him like an old friend and hugged him. The 2 reminisced. Inch also briefly recounted some interesting stories that he had encountered during the past 2 years of practice, which made Dr. Brive laugh. Then I got to the point. Dr. Brive puts the cat back on the ground, and Masaseki introduces to Qi the things you asked me to make. As early as a year ago, it was completely completed. You come with me. Inch followed Dr. Brive to his lab. Dr. Brive pulled out a pocket watch-style item from a drawer and handed it to him. This is the dragon bead radar you wanted. By the time I made the radar, Boomer had been yelling several times to go on her way to find the dragon beads. However, she also said that she would wait for you and Lan Fang to be together, so she never left. She'd be glad to learn you're here. By the way, she's been on an alien planet with her sister recently. Quote. Yingqi looked at the dragon bead radar in his hand a little speechlessly. It is worthy of being from the hands of the father of the genius girl Boomer, and the specifications are even smaller than the one in the original book. But what does it mean to make an apple? Dr. Brive, were you possessed by Jobs, or were you bewitched by the Grim Reaper Ryuk? It's good if you just make it into a square. Seeing the strange expression on Inki's face, Dr. Brive also noticed it, and scratched his head embarrassedly. I myself like to eat apples very much. If you don't like it, I can change it to something else for you. Quote. Yingqi's horn twitched, and he forced a smile. No need, this is fine. By the way, how does this Dragon Ball radar work? After Dr. Brive taught Inch how to properly use the Dragon Ball radar, he led him to the lawn outside. Inki watched as he took out the largest model of the universal capsule, pressed the switch, and threw it on the ground. Bang! There was a giant spherical spaceship in its place. The height of this spaceship is even higher than that of Dr. Brive's mansion. This is no ordinary height. You know, Dr. Brive's inner garden is home to a long-necked dragon. The overall shape is not much different from the spaceship in the original book. The surface is also black and white. In the center of the room, there is also the unique logo manufacturing mark of Magnum Capsule. Dr. Brive pulled something from his pocket that resembled a remote control and pressed the top button. The next moment, in the belly of the spaceship, a door opened directly, followed by a chain elevator. Dr. Brive stepped on the conveyor track first. "Come with me, I'll show you the inner workings of this ship." Quote. Filled with a sense of novelty, Inch followed Dr. Brive and walked into the interior of the ship. "I did what you asked me to do. That Sleeping Beauty energy crystal of yours, I've used it in this spaceship's power supply system." Quote. As an aside, how did you get this energy crystal? Do you know? With current science and technology, there is no way to detect how much energy it contains. And according to the algorithm I created myself, with it, your spacecraft will continue to fly in the universe for 10,000 years, and you don't need to worry about energy. Quote. The gravity training system you value the most, powered by the Sleeping Beauty energy crystal, theoretically has no upper limit. But I estimate that if the gravity exceeds 3,000 times, even if there is an isolation device, I am afraid that the gravity chamber material itself will not be able to withstand it. Quote. I've entered all the cosmic coordinates from the other two spaceships into this spaceship. You can also go to any alien planet you want by voice or by hand. Quote. I won't introduce the kitchen, living room, lounge, activity room, etc. It's no different from a normal house. Now, let me explain to you in detail how to operate this spaceship. The first is the master console. Inch was very satisfied that Dr. Brive had built the ship for himself. After all, he's a standard detail maniac. Even the welt lines on the flush toilet need to be carefully considered. From Dr. Brive's hand, when he received the largest universal capsule containing the giant spaceship, Inch said thank you very sincerely. He didn't talk about compensation. Because when talking about money, he is obviously insulting the world's richest man who treats him quite enthusiastically. Yingqi just silently kept these giant, big favors in his heart. After lunch was finished at Dr. Brive's house, everyone went their separate ways. The four women went to a nearby tourist resort to soak in the hot springs as promised. Dr. Brive habitually went to take a nap. Inch went out alone. In the morning, when he got the dragon bead radar, he remembered another thing about treasure. In the anime, Monkey King and Boomer and his party, when they collected dragon beads for the second time, once found a pirate base hidden at the bottom of the sea. And this pirate base houses the wealth of pirates who have been robbed for more than 10 years, or even decades. There are absolutely a lot of gold and silver treasures inside, and they are terrifying. What's more worth mentioning is that many of the gems and jade in it should be regarded as valuable antiques when taken out now. Thinking back to the joy on the faces of the two daughters, Pasta and Lan Fang, when the queen of the country near the Demon Gate gave away the jewels more than 2 months ago, and Inki felt that it was absolutely necessary for him to take advantage of his free time to take out these ownerless wealth. While enriching your pocket, you can also make these treasures see the light of day. Well, I can give some to Mrs. Brive. It's also good to repay some favors early. After all, most of those treasures have a sense of history, and they are good things that money can't buy. Quote. With Yingqi's current combat effectiveness, under the high-speed flight, it didn't take half an hour to reach the destination. The sea is vast. It was impossible for Inch to rummage through every inch, so before he came, he first delineated the general sea area by looking up relevant history books and identifying the active locations of those famous pirates. According to the location relationship between the Red Ribbon Legion and the pirate treasure in the anime, it is through its overseas jurisdiction that it finally locks in the most likely sea area. At this time, General Blue, who was in charge of the overseas jurisdiction of the Red Ribbon, had not yet ascended to the throne. Otherwise, Inki would have had less time to confirm. Relative to the average person, Yingqi's exploration of the bottom of the sea is like playing. The digital body allows him to walk or swim freely in the sea with ease. Breathing problems can also be completely ignored. The efficiency of his search is naturally high, and it scares people to death. But even so, it is still very difficult to search blindly like a needle in a haystack. On the first day of the search, unsurprisingly nothing was found. Inch was not discouraged, and when it came to finding pirate treasure, he intended to give a budget of 2 months. For the rest of the day, Inch spent the ocean running between Dr. Brive and Dr. Brive's house. He didn't reveal anything about the pirate's treasure in advance. Pasta, Lan Fang, and Zhou Anqi had already been playing with Madame Brive, and they had not noticed Yingqi's strange movements during this time. In the blink of an eye, a month and a half passed in a hurry. Yingqi still hasn't found anything. Just when he was ready to return empty-handed, and was about to wait until the second dragon bead collection to find it again, he finally made a breakthrough discovery. Beneath the sea surface, about 1,000 nautical miles north of the Red Ribbon Legion's overseas base, stands a huge ridge shaped like an upright seal. And on the back side of this ridge, Inch discovers a huge, large cave. The cave is clearly not a natural formation, and there are obvious signs of artificial excavation. Yingqi went all the way down this artificial cavern. Finally, they arrived at the inside of the pirate base in the anime, where Boomer, Clint, and Monkey King could crash into by casually escaping for their lives. Yingqi shook his head helplessly, and walked ashore on the water, entering the tunnel where there was still electric lighting. Yingqi, who has watched the anime, certainly knows that this is not a pirate base where there are still living pirates. Instead, there is a pirate robot dedicated to guarding the treasure, which is working diligently to maintain the normal operation of the entire base. Not long after walking, Yingqi came to the full-hole trap passage that the pirates had specially laid out in the anime in order to prevent outsiders from infiltrating. It is about 20 meters long. It is simply impossible for ordinary people to pass. And in the anime, Goku and Klin, two non-humans, directly leapfrog the past unreasonably in a jumping way. Inchi, of course, is jumpable and flyable. However, he still found the mechanism and chose to pass through the side road. The reason is that there is also an electric eel more than 3 meters long growing in the side road. It is said that the electric eel is very delicious. Coming to the puddle, Yingqi sensed the position of the electric eel with his breath. Immediately raised his right hand, and a whole wave easily pierced through its head, killing it. After putting away the large electric eel with the universal capsule, it didn't take long for Inji to arrive at the real pirate inner harbor. That is, an absolutely secret base hidden in the sea and mountains. Here it is. It's a little bit of a hassle. While the pirate robot is easy to solve, its signaling system should be connected to the main defense system of the entire pirate base. Once it is destroyed, the main defense system that receives the signal will automatically activate the destruction process, blowing up the entire pirate port. The entire base would then collapse completely, burying the trespasser and the treasure forever. This kind of vicious style is exactly what pirates have always done. Come to think of it, Yingqi flew up, first found the main control building, and cut off the power supply of the entire base. In this way, there is no fear of any more moths in the main control system. The next moment, the entire harbor was darkened. Yingqi calmly ran the earth-shattering palm of all nations, and a strong electric light emitted from his left hand. He used it as a light and flew towards the location of the pirate treasure in his memory. Turn right at the fork in the road, pass through the last waterway, and smoothly come to the place where the treasure is located. Floating on the water, the first thing that catches your eye is the huge, large stone sculpture of Goddess of Mercy with 1,000 hands. The guanyin enshrined by this pirate is not as merciful as in mythology, and all the swords held in the palms of dozens of hands are sharp swords. Once someone enters its sensing range, they will be attacked mercilessly. However, Inki is also very clear. This bottle of 1,000-armed cannon is full of gold coins and precious stones, as well as valuable necklaces, pearls, and so on. And this, it was only an extremely small part of the pirate treasure, and in the secret room behind the walls around the 1,000-armed guanyin, there were also a large number of gold, silver, jewelry, crown jade, and so on. Besides, beneath the waterway where the stone platform is built in the corner, there is also an amazing treasure. The wealth accumulated by pirates is too much. So much so that after General Blue saw it, he couldn't help but have the idea of betraying the Red Ribbon Legion and taking these treasures for himself. He even said something like, "I'm going to be the richest man in the world." It took a lot of effort for Yingqi to collect all the treasures one by one. And in the process, even if he didn't understand the value of these precious stones, gold, and other luxuries, he realized that what he had obtained this time was a much more exaggerated wealth than the ruby in the country of Gurmis. Among the giant spaceships, gravity training room. You can pick whatever you want, as long as you like the jewelry, you can take as many pieces as you want. Inki flew in the air and said with her hands spread out to Pasta, Lan Fang, Zhou Anqi, and Lady Brive standing at the door. It's not that Yingqi deliberately wants to pretend to be forced, but there is no place to stay. The gravity cultivation room is a place specially used by Yingqi for cultivation, and the area naturally occupies the largest space on the spaceship. The length and width of the foot are 260 meters each. But even so, the riches looted from the pirate base still filled every inch of the place. Not only that, but it was piled up more than a meter high. The golden glow of gold coins, nuggets, and gold objects, as well as the brilliance of the various ornate jewels, illuminated the entire gravity chamber like a sanctuary. At this moment, none of the girls who were named by Yingqi were not confused and dumbfounded. They even wondered if their eyes were hallucinating and their ears were delusional. What Yingqi should have said just now is that you can pick these green vegetables and radishes instead of these jewelry. Otherwise, how can everything in front of you be reasonably explained? Pasta suddenly gasped, exhaled in pain, and glared at Lan Fang, who was stunned next to him. "Why are you pinching me?" Lan Fang still stared blankly at the mountains of gold, silver and jewelry piled up in front of her. "It hurts. This shows that what is in front of you is not an illusion, nor is it a dream. It's all true." Her eyes widened and she hugged Pasta and screamed wildly. It's really hard for men to understand how much of a woman's passion for jewelry, especially when a lot of jewelry is within easy reach. Although Zhou Anqi was young, she was also pulled by Lan Fang and joined the celebration team. Mrs. Brive, who finally came to her senses, also smiled. Although she is the richest lady in the world, all that money is a string of numbers on the account. How can there be a big psychological impact of replacing all the gold, gemstones, and jewelry in front of you? She suddenly thought of a little, looked up and asked in surprise, "Yingqi, shouldn't you have exchanged all the money on your body for these things?" Hearing this, Pasta, Lan Fang and Zhou Anqi couldn't help but quiet down. Although they also liked the golden coins and the colorful gems, it would be a bit uneconomical to buy them all with Thor. After all, these can't be used as money. Before Inch could reply, Dr. Brive, behind Mrs. Brive, had already interjected, "Honey, you can look away this time. The stuff here is not only worth more than 30 billion souls. Look at the sapphire over there, it's bigger than the heart of the ocean that appeared at the last auction in the central capital. Even Heart of the Ocean has sold more than 1 billion sol. And those antiques, those jades, are not ordinary. I really don't know where Yingqi got them." Quote. The short-sighted Pasta, Lan Fang and Zhou Anqi all gasped. Pasta suddenly asked uneasily, "Inki, you must have robbed all the top goldsmiths, jewelry, and antique stores in the world." As soon as Pasta said this, everyone else turned their eyes to Inki. Yingqi shook his head with a smile. "Look at what you said, can I be that kind of person? These gold, silver and jewels were all obtained from an unmanned pirate base that I accidentally broke into when I was out. The source can definitely be said to be above board." Quote. Listening to Inki's answer, the three Pasta women hurriedly cheered, rushed into the treasure pile in surprise, and picked out their favorite jewelry. Mrs. Brive, though a little reserved, did not regard herself as an outsider either, and rushed into the nearest pile of gems. Even Dr. Brive's white cat couldn't help but break in. Inchi smiled, flew straight to the door, and said to Dr. Brive, "You can also go in and pick up some antiques that interest you. Those daggers full of gems are also good for decoration." Quote. Dr. Brive hurriedly waved his hand, "I don't have to." Quote. Yingqi couldn't help but push him in. For the next week, Pasta and Lan Fang were in ecstasy. Because Yingqi asked them, Zhou Anqi, and Mrs. Brive to help bring back the gold, silver, and jewelry in the gravity cultivation room into the universal capsule. The thought that the gems and jewelry in it would fall into their hands in the future, the heads of the two women were dizzy. When the gravity cultivation room was finally cleaned up, Inky prepared to leave Earth and set off for an uninhabited planet according to his plan. The three pastas had also wanted to travel with him to the universe. But after thinking about it carefully, Inky still didn't take them with him. First, this trip to the universe shouldn't be too long. He just wants to find an uninhabited planet outside the galaxy at random, so that he can use the Black Star Dragon bead to make a wish. Second, there are too many unknown risks in the universe, and there is no need to take such a senseless risk with the people around him before he is completely strong. Third, they stay on Earth, and if Yingqi has an accident, they can also help collect the dragon bead to resurrect him. After Yingqi explained these truths clearly, although Pasta and Lanfang were reluctant to part with him, they still agreed very sensibly. After saying goodbye to everyone one by one, Yingqi piloted the giant spaceship, randomly selected an uninhabited planet far from the Earth, and set off. Meanwhile, in a galactic patrol ship outside the Earth's universe, 8-year-old Boomer kept shaking Gak, who looked like a miniature version of Superman with purple salted eggs. I haven't had enough of Ulfi. Gak was almost dizzy from Boomer's shaking head. Stop, it's Tiza's idea to send Boomer back to Earth. She said you're about to start school and you have to send it back. Quote. Letting go of Gak, Boomer snorted coldly, tilted his head, and hugged Hun with his big hands. I don't want to go to school. The content taught is only at the kindergarten level. Quote. Gak was just about to say something, but suddenly his face changed. There is a situation. He hurriedly rushed to the driver's platform and tilted the steering wheel to the left desperately. The next moment, a huge spaceship, rubbing shoulders with them. If it weren't for Gak's timely change of direction just now, I'm afraid that the spaceship the two of them would have been crashed into cosmic dust. Hey, saved. Gak slumped limply in his chair, wiping a handful of sweat from his heart. Boomer was terrified. At first, he was in a daze for a while, and then he shouted, "Who is so immoral?" After shouting, Boomer himself was stunned. Oh, no. No one else on Earth seems to have a spaceship except for me, right? Besides, the big spaceship is a little familiar. Is it a godfather? Gak turned around and scratched his head. That Boomer, I seem to have seen the logo of your Universal Capsule Company on that spaceship. Quote. Ah, it's really my godfather. Boomer rushed up again and grabbed Gak's collar and shook it desperately. Godfather didn't say yes. When you come back, you will accompany me to find the Dragon Pearl. Why did you take Lan Fang and them to the universe again? Gravity Training Room. Immersed in the practice, Yingqi was completely unaware that he had rubbed shoulders with Boomer and Gak. At this moment, the screen of the gravity maker shows 2g, which is twice the normal gravity. This number is simply insignificant compared to Monkey King's 100g and Vegeta's 300g. But Yingqi, who was doing push-ups, although he didn't sweat like rain due to the digitization of his body, he couldn't bear it. The reason is simple. Yingqi is also wearing a 3t weight-bearing coat, which is twice the weight of 6t in the case of twice the gravity. Of course, this will make him, who has just adapted to the 3t weight jacket for more than 2 years, greatly unbearable. Actually, really compared, Yingqi's current cultivation method is obviously much more difficult than the tenfold gravity cultivation of pure light loading. Based on his weight of 80 kg, 10 times the gravity is only 800 kg, and he has not even reached 1t. Naturally, there is no comparison. However, although the pressure is high, every time he does a push-up, Yingqi can clearly feel that the potential in his body is squeezed out a little. Of course, without the support of infinite physical strength, he might have been suppressed by the weight of 6t long ago, lying on the ground and unable to move. After only 10 push-ups, the blue spot on his right eye suddenly flickered. Yingqi opened the blue screen interface in surprise and found that his combat power had indeed risen a little. He couldn't help but gasp. The last time it was so easy to improve, it was when I first arrived on Earth. But at that time, the combat power base was only more than 300. Yingqi couldn't help but pay attention to his health bar again. As he expected, it's consuming at a rate of 6 points per second. The body still has a little blood return per second, so the real blood consumption is 5 points per second. This fully shows that the body cannot bear the weight of 6t normally. Every second spent in such an environment will cause the body to be traumatized all the time. But Inch didn't care at all. The digitized body will only run out of blood and die, and it will not be tired or injured. It is full at all times. And he can completely withstand this kind of blood consumption. What's more, if you really want to be in a near-death state, a single immortal being can regain blood. Therefore, Yingqi, who had tasted the sweetness, intensified his efforts and prepared to focus on cultivation 24 hours a day. Push-up, sit-up, squats, leapfrog, stand-up push-ups, run at high speed. As long as it was an exercise that Yingqi could think of, in the gravity cultivation room, it was all done one by one. It's not that he deliberately wants to exercise his whole body muscles, but if he only does one cultivation, it will be too monotonous and boring for a long time. In this way, in less than a day, Yingqi's combat power value skyrocketed by 524 points. It fully shows that this kind of self-harming squeezing cultivation is the most suitable cultivation method for a digitized human being like him. It was early in the morning of the second day. The amount of blood fell to an endangered state, and Yingqi decisively took fairy beans. Saiyan-specific bugs play in effect again. Yingqi's combat power value was instantly doubled. It was originally 5,924, but it surged to 11,848 all of a sudden. Although the doubling of combat power made Yingqi very happy. But the change in the specific value made him a little incomprehensible. The last endangered breakthrough, he remembered, had a threefold effect. This time, however, it inexplicably fell back to twice as much. The specific reason for this, Yingqi can't figure it out. It can only be boiled down to uncontrollable characteristics. After all, there is a precedent, and Sun Wukong used the endangered recovery many times in the process of flying to Namek in a spaceship to practice. But until he arrived at Namek and got off the spaceship, it was only 90,000 combat power. And he was only seriously injured once on Namek, and after recovering, his combat power soared to 3 million. The doubling of the combat power value naturally brings about an increase in the level of the injitions. The hierarchical realm division of Orthodox Saiyans, the specific values are based on this. Lower level warriors, 1-3000, low tier, 1-1000, intermediate, 1001-2000, high tier, 2001-3000. Intermediate warrior, 3001-9000, low tier, 3001-5000, intermediate tier, 5001-7000, high tier, 7001-9000. Advanced warrior, 9001-18000, low rank, 9001-12000, intermediate rank, 12001-15000, high rank, 15001-18000. Quasi-general, 1800-13000, low level, 1800-12200, intermediate, 2200-12600, high level, 2600-13000. Lower level generals, 3000-16000, low level, 3000-14000, intermediate, 4000-15000, high level, 5000-16000. Intermediate general, 6000-11200, low rank, 6000-18000, intermediate rank, 8000-11000, high rank, 1000-11200. Upper rank, 1200-12100, lower rank, 1200-11500, intermediate rank, 1500-11800, high rank, 1800-12100. Quasi-God of War, 2100-13700, low level, 2100-12500, intermediate, 2500-12900, high level, 3300-13700. Low level God of War, 3700-16700, lower level, 3700-14700, intermediate level, 4700-15700, high level, 5700-16700. Intermediate God of War, 6700-1127000, lower, 6700-18700, intermediate, 8700-1107000, advanced, 1070001127000. Advanced God of War, 1270001217000. Lower, 1270001157000. Intermediate, 1570001187000. High, 1870001217000. Quasi-War Emperor, 2170001300000. War Emperor, 3 million or more. Now Yingqi's combat value has broken through to 11,848, and it is obvious that he has crossed 2 levels at one time, from a middle-level intermediate warrior to a low-level upper warrior. At the same time, the amount of health soared again. When promoted from a mid-level warrior to a high-level mid-level warrior, the amount of HP doubles to 398,096, while when a high-level mid-level warrior breaks through to a low-level upper-level warrior, the amount of HP triples and becomes a 1,194,288. The spaceship was still early to reach its destination, and Yingqi continued to cultivate. After the battle value skyrocketed, he obviously felt a lot easier in his cultivation. Naturally, the effect has weakened a bit. But it's too early to say that it's completely adaptable. The amount of HP still consumes 3 points per second, which is proof of this. In the blink of an eye, nearly 7 days have passed. Yingqi once again entered the endangered blood volume, and naturally swallowed the second immortal bean. This time, the combat power still doubled, becoming 26,506. The Saiyan's level realm once again soared to the realm of a high-level quasi-general. Once again, the amount of blood has skyrocketed. When a low-level fighter breaks through a middle-level fighter, Yingqi's HP becomes 2,388,576. When a mid-level fighter breaks through a high-level fighter, Yingqi's HP becomes 4,777,152. When a high-level warrior broke through the low-level brigadier generals of the Great Realm, Yingqi's HP became 4,331,456. When the low-level quasi-war general broke through the middle-level brigadier general, Yingqi's HP became 28,662,912. When the mid-level brigadier broke through the high-level brigadier general, Yingqi's HP became 5,732,824. More than 50 million blood. This is the amount of explosive blood that Yingqi has never reached in his previous life playing Dragon Beat Universe OL online games. It can be said that the amount of blood has reached this level, and as long as Yingqi does not deliberately seek death in the future, I believe that even if the whole king is eliminated, I am afraid that he will not be able to kill him again. After all, even if he dies once, he consumes 1,000 points of blood, and the blood volume of more than 50 million can supply him with more than 50,000 deaths. There was plenty of time for him to die and resurrect, enough for him to travel to other universes. So far, Yingqi also stopped cultivating for the time being. Because in one night, the spaceship will reach the destination of this trip, the planet Adria. So, Yingqi slept beautifully. By the time he opened his eyes again, the Big Mac spaceship had landed safely. When you open the hatch, you will see the yellow sand in the sky. No matter where you look, there are still endless sand dunes that stretch to the horizon. It feels like a desert planet. In fact, it is. In Namek, Adria means desert. Flying to a relatively flat high hill, Yingqi squinted and glanced up at the sky. The planet was too close to the star. The initial surface temperature is estimated to be around 100 degrees Celsius, and very few living organisms can survive in such a harsh environment. This is destined to be a garbage planet. Therefore, even if it is destroyed, there's nothing to be sorry about. Yingqi took out the universal capsule containing the black star dragon bead. With a casual click, he dropped it on the ground. The next moment, 7 black star dragon beads appeared neatly in front of Yingqi, and they were still flashing with a shimmer, which was the resonance phenomenon of the dragon beads themselves. Although he has seen a lot of Goku and they make wishes in the anime, it is the first time that it is his turn. Yingqi swallowed a little saliva, and said in a steady voice, "Shenlong, come out." With Yingqi's call, the 7 black star dragon beads all appeared with flashing lightning. Immediately after, thick dark clouds gathered from all directions, and the whole sky darkened. In the midst of lightning and thunder, a golden lightning bolt the size of a water tank soared upward, bending and circling, forming a behemoth wrapped in golden light. After a while, the golden light dissipated. In the sky, a giant, large four-clawed dragon appeared in myths and legends. The whole body is cherry red, exuding supreme majesty. Ah! A deafening voice resounded through the world. It also clearly fell into Yingqi's ears. Yingqi's heart moved, and he subconsciously moved. He did have a great wish hidden in his heart. I believe that as soon as I say it, as long as it can be realized, I will be invincible immediately. However, Inch also knew that it was impossible. The divine dragon in front of him will not be so powerful at all. Only a super dragon can make that wish come true. Thereupon, Yingqi still suppressed his irrational thoughts, and according to the plan he had already thought of, he calmly spoke, "Shenlong, my wish is that in the future, when I become a Saiyan giant ape, I can completely maintain my sanity and maintain my consciousness." Quote. This wish was already decided by Yingqi when he mastered the skill of Artificial Moon. Without the royal blood of the Saiyans, you can't keep your sanity after transforming into a Saiyan giant ape. At best, it's just a giant big beast that only knows how to vent destruction, killing, despairing. The threat is just average. But if you can keep your sanity, the situation is completely different. The Saiyan giant ape is a tenfold increase in strength on the basis of the Saiyan's own combat power. It can be called a qualitative change. For example, Yingqi only has more than 26,000 combat power now, but once he transforms into a Saiyan giant ape, it will be more than 260,000 combat power. The gap is that one was beaten by Team Kainut and the other team was beaten by Team Kinyat. It's just not a trick. Once this wish is realized, Yingqi will have a powerful killer weapon equivalent to the tenfold Realm King Fist. And the most important thing is to keep sanity in the state of the Golden Giant Ape, which is the most critical part of transforming into Super Saiyan IV. It is equivalent to saying that Yingqi's move is to lay a solid foundation for transforming into Super Match 4 in advance. It's a win-win-win-win. After hearing Yingqi's wish clearly, the dragon's two blood-red eyes instantly bloomed with a terrifying light. I see. Quote. It didn't take long for Yingqi to immediately notice that his head was covered with something. It's refreshing and cool. After about 2 minutes, my mind seemed to be much lighter. It was as if an invisible shackle had been removed. Your wish, I have come true. Well, goodbye. After the dragon finished saying this, the dragon's whiskers, which had been floating steadily, instantly stopped. The entire huge dragon body also seems to be frozen in the picture. The next moment, it degenerated again into lightning golden light, and the 7 dragon beads in the golden light soon flew away in 7 directions in the universe. Yingqi breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, another very important goal has been accomplished. Cosmic space outside the Adriatic planet. A large pumpkin-shaped spaceship is heading towards the planet Tukachi along a predetermined orbit. Sitting in the position of the commander of the spaceship is a red-skinned, thorny, stocky alien like a ball. He wears the standard Frieza Legion combat uniform and an energy detector on his left eye. Apparently subordinate to the vicious Emperor of the universe, a high-ranking general in the legions under Frieza. If Yingqi was here, I'm afraid he would be instantly recognizable as Frieza's right and left hand, Dodoria. A ruthless guy, but he bullies the soft and is afraid of the hard. At this time, Dodoria was leaning on the chair handle, his right hand supporting his head, looking boredly at the boundless universe outside the spaceship, and occasionally yawning a big yawn. I miss those Saiyan monkeys. If they were still around, we wouldn't need to run around like this all day. It's weird, why are there so many planetary orders lately? I haven't seen King Frieza in almost half a year. I don't know how King Frieza has been. Quote. As soon as Dodoria's words fell, the liaison on his left eye suddenly moved, and a creepy voice rang out, "Ha ha ha, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Dodoria. To be honest, I miss those Saiyan monkeys a little bit. After all, they're still very easy to use." Quote. Furred. King Frieza. Dodoria's forehead immediately broke out with hot sweat, and her body subconsciously sat straight. However, the planet Vegeta has been destroyed by a meteorite. Saiyans are a thing of the past. During this time, I have worked hard for you. When you're done with this, you can come back to me and recuperate for a while. Frieza said lightly. Thank you, Lord Frieza. Dodoria hurriedly thanked him. But at that moment, the spaceship shook slightly as if it had been hit by something. Dodoria was shocked. What's going on? Is it under attack? Someone from one of his subordinates immediately replied. Lord Dodoria, it is not clear what the situation is, but there is no trace of the enemy in the vicinity. Quote. Oh, how dare you offend the Frieza Legion, Dodoria, go and teach each other a memorable lesson. Naturally, what hit the Dodoria spaceship was the black star dragon bead scattered from the Adria planet and flew to various parts of the universe. The individual of the black star dragon bead is too small, and even if it crashes into a spaceship, it does not cause much impact. The soldiers of the Frieza Legion on the spaceship, after panicking for a while, naturally calmed down. According to Dodoria's orders, he flew to the planet Adriatic instead. Seeing that the black star dragon beads had flown away, Yinkikai bent down to pick up the empty universal capsule with satisfaction. Just as he was about to return to the Big Mac spaceship, he suddenly felt a powerful and evil aura rapidly approaching him. And around this powerful chi, there are many evil auras that are relatively weak, but far superior to the human powerhouses on the earth. Yingqi couldn't help frowning and looked up at the sky. Which boss did you bump into in advance? Frieza was bored, so she kept in touch with Dodoria. How is it, Dodoria, have you found the enemy who attacked you? Dodoria skillfully operated the energy detector as she replied, yes, Lord Frieza. Well, it has now been confirmed that there is only one opponent. The combat effectiveness seems to be somewhat good. Quote. Oh, is it? A single person would dare to challenge our Frieza Legion. What courage is commendable. Then Dodoria, you can treat him well for me. Frieza chuckled. Yes, Lord Frieza, I must. Dodoria was about to answer, but was startled by the value on the screen of the energy detector. How is this possible? The combat power has exceeded 10,000, and it is still increasing rapidly. Frieza was also slightly surprised. It seems that the enemy this time is not a small role. A drop of cold sweat slipped quietly from Dodoria's head. 17,000, 18,000, 19,000. It's already over 20,000. There can be such a powerful enemy on this desolate planet. Quote. Fortunately, the values on the screen, after climbing tenaciously for a while, finally stopped. Looking at the final value, Dodoria's heart that had been hanging was slowly put back. But there was no doubt that this was the strongest enemy he had ever faced in all his years with Frieza. 21,706. I'm optimistic about you. Frieza became even more interested in hearing Dodoria's final report. Got it, Mistress Frieza. I won't let you down. Dodoria said respectfully. Yingqi naturally did not rush to escape. Judging by the breath, the opponent is only slightly stronger than he is in the state of carrying weights. Why run away? As the breath got closer and closer, Yingqi finally saw the enemy clearly. Oh, the pumpkin spaceship, it seems to be someone from the Frieza Legion. But who is in charge of the spaceship? Judging from the strength of the Chi, Chuyi, Dodoria, and Shangbo are all possible. It just so happened that his strength had also improved, so he simply cut off one of Frieza's wings in advance. Quote. Yingqi smiled confidently and quietly waited for the arrival of the enemy. Just for a moment, the pumpkin spaceship stopped on the sand dunes just a kilometer away. After the hatch of the head was opened, Dodoria led the way, and more than 300 soldiers of the Frieza Legion flew towards Inki in unison. Click, 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 click. Not for a while. More than 300 people fell in front of Yingqi in an endless stream. As soon as he landed, Dodoria couldn't wait to say, boy, no matter who you are, if you offend our Frieza Legion, there is only one way to die. Inji was baffled by Dodoria's robbery, and he couldn't think of when he would provoke the Frieza army. However, since it has been decided to be ruthless, at this time, it is impossible to show weakness anymore. He smiled coldly and said, Dodoria, you have such a big breath, it seems that you think you can win against me. Dodoria was taken aback by Inchi's name. Finally, he took a serious look at Yingqi. When he saw the familiar tail wrapped around his waist, he couldn't help but be startled. You, actually a Saiyan. As soon as Dodoria said this, even Frieza, who was several galaxies away, was startled. Saiyan. In addition to Vegeta's 3 lucky ones, there are other Saiyans alive. Meanwhile, Pabilla on the planet. Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz, who were on a clearing mission, all stopped involuntarily. Vegeta's arrogant face also became cloudy. Originally, when he heard that Dodoria's new enemy had a combat strength of more than 21, he was still a little gloating. But I didn't expect that the new enemy was actually the surviving Saiyan. 21,706. How could there be a Saiyan with a fighting power that surpassed that of a Saiyan prince like him? Nappa and Raditz also subconsciously focused their eyes on Vegeta. Why, were you surprised to see me as a Saiyan? Did you surprised that I didn't die in the explosion on planet Vegeta? Dodoria. Inki looked at Dodoria with a smile. Dodoria's eyes flickered for a moment, and she asked, "Who are you, and what else do you know?" Yingqi didn't think about it, and casually dug a big hole for Daries. "My name is Dales." He was a survivor of the conspiracy back then. Dodoria, you didn't expect that, did you? I was lucky enough to get the seed of the spirit tree. Over the years, I have made incredible progress in my strength by devouring the fruits grown from the spirit tree. Quote. Frieza. Inki suddenly raised his voice. He knew very well that Frieza could hear the current words through the contact. When my strength surpasses yours, I will definitely go to you to avenge the revenge of the past. Wash my neck and wait for me, and I'll kill Dodoria today to get some interest back from you. Frieza listened to Inki's flickering through the liaison, and suddenly held his chin, revealing a thoughtful look, and muttered, "Spirit tree fruit, where do you seem to have heard of it?" The three Vegetas on the planet Pabilla were even more stunned when they heard the voice coming from the communicator clearly. Raditz suddenly slapped his palm and said loudly, "I remember. I once had a relationship with this Darius. That guy was just a junior warrior like my brother Kakarot. How is it possible that there will be more than 20,000 combat strength now?" Vegeta's eyes couldn't help but show greed, and even his face was a little distorted. "Is it the fruit of the spirit tree? You dare to eat it secretly by yourself without offering it to me, the noble Saiyan prince?" Dodoria laughed and said, "Saiyan monkey who has gone out of his shit luck, do you think you can beat me?" Yingqi smiled disdainfully. "Do you think that now I have taken out all my strength? It's too naive. The spirit tree fruit is not as simple as you imagined. The upper limit of 23,000 can't measure my true strength. However, don't worry, I don't need to show all my strength to deal with you." Quote. Inki reckoned that it was almost time to fool Frieza with such a set. When he searched for Dales and the spiritual tree fruit all over the universe, he was just able to develop steadily on Earth and achieve overtaking in the corner of becoming a Super Saiyan. "You fart." Dodoria was completely enraged by Inchi's nobody's attitude. The whole person burst out with incredible speed, rushed in front of Yingqi, and aimed at his head, which was a fierce elbow drop. In the face of this fierce attack, Yingqi smiled. Now he was really glad that he had been cultivating in the Earth Heavenly Temple for 2 years, and under the same realm, he really felt that Dodoria was simply too much worse than himself. There are flaws all over the body. Moreover, all the attack movements have been seen by him clearly, and they have been predicted in advance. With a base of 20,000 combat strength, the difference in a few hundred values is already very small. In terms of speed, the two are almost comparable. Coupled with the ability to anticipate the opponent's moves in advance, Inki was extremely light, holding up Dodoria's elbow. But, with a combat value of more than 20,000, he is already a powerhouse at the level of explosive star in the Dragon Bead world. Naturally, the movement caused by the fight could no longer be as calm as hundreds. Even if Inki caught Dodoria's attack, the residual energy poured into the ground, still forming a spectacular yellow sand waterfall. The sand is sprinkled in the air. Inki had already sensed the trajectory of Dodoria's next attack, and while making an early avoidance, he punched Dodoria in the face. Bang! Dodoria had a nosebleed and flew backwards. This time, he was also completely enraged. "Saiyan monkey, I'm going to kill you." Dodoria roared angrily, and the whole person went berserk, and kept attacking Yingqi. His attack speed is many times faster than that of Bobo, the strongest man on the earth, and even the lightning and flint are not enough to describe. The two of them moved as they fought. Everywhere you go, the dunes burst at every turn. It's like a movie special effect. Yingqi is also the first time to fight with a master with tens of thousands of combat power, and his fighting style is cautious, mainly defending. But after a while, he fully grasped the degree. The style gradually shifted to offense. Dodoria, who couldn't attack Yingqi and had been falling behind, was completely at an absolute disadvantage at this moment. In just 30 seconds, he had already hit Yingqi with 6 punches and 3 kicks. Even the combat power has dropped a lot. And he didn't even touch a corner of Yingqi's clothes. Dodoria was originally relying on a breath of anger, and as the battle progressed, the more he fought, the more frightened he became, and the more he fought, the more he was afraid, and the momentum at the beginning was completely unknown. After another punch with Yingqi, but he was repulsed by force, the fighting spirit in his eyes quickly disappeared at a speed that was visible to his eyes. Looking at Yingqi, who took the initiative to rush up, he waved quickly with his left and right hands. More than 30 energy bombs erupted in a row. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Thick gunsmoke, with the sound of violent explosions, spread, obscuring Dodoria's view. Dead, Dodoria thought with great anticipation. But when the smoke cleared, a golden energy shield appeared, completely shattering his beautiful illusions. Inji removed her shield and stormed Dodoria's front door again. Dodoria was terrified, and in a hurry, he hurriedly sprayed light bullets to meet the enemy. Inki also took a shot, and the golden energy pillar shot out at great speed, directly hitting Dodoria's light bullet, forcing it back. Yingqi's real combat power is far superior to Dodoria's, and his fist and foot kung fu has the suppression of the weight suit, and he can barely make do, but if he chooses to fight against the wave, Dodoria will definitely be humiliated. Boom! The violent explosion exploded directly on the door of Dodoria's face. Then he flew out upside down, covered in wounds. I fell to the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. The more than 300 soldiers of the Frieza Legion who accompanied Dodoria were all stunned, looking at everything in disbelief. God! Lord Dodoria, who has always been invincible, was defeated. Lord Dodoria is defeated. Run for your life. The enemy is too strong. In panic, these people fled to the pumpkin spaceship like lost dogs. However, how could Inki allow these minions to go back and deliver superfluous information to Frieza? With a flick of his right hand, the fingertips of his 5 fingers together had already burst out with a golden energy lightsaber more than 2 feet long. Then he burst out at top speed, like a hurricane, and flew past the frightened Frieza legionmen. The next moment, I saw heads rising into the sky. In just a few minutes, more than 300 Frieza legionnaires had been slaughtered, killed by Inki's high efficiency. The headless corpse fell silently on the sand, and the scene was very tragic. When Inki turned around, there was no one standing in front of him. He put away his finger lightsaber and walked unhurriedly towards the badly wounded Dodoria. Coming to Dodoria, who was still lying on his back, Yingqi didn't bother to check what his condition was, and put his hands and 5 fingers together, forming a triangular shape, ready to directly end the other party's life with a Qigong cannon. Perhaps sensing that death was coming, Dodoria said angrily, don't kill me. Begging for mercy is really in line with his personality. Yingqi smiled and was about to send him back to the west. But my heart suddenly moved, and I thought of my next important plan. So I changed my mind again. Dodoria, I accept your allegiance. In the future, your dog's life will be mine. Yingqi said coldly. I see. Thank you, Lord Dales, for your magnanimity, said Dodoria, eager to survive. Afterwards, Inch carried the seriously injured Dodoria and flew directly into the pumpkin spaceship. He knew very well that most of the technology of the Frieza Legion came from the Xaver Star, and one of the very powerful technologies was the liquid medical machine. No matter how many traumatic injuries you have suffered, as long as you go in for a day and a night of recuperation, you will be able to recover quickly. And if the injured person has a strong constitution, the recovery speed can be faster. Now that the Frieza Legion on Adria has been wiped out, Dodoria has also surrendered to Inki. Naturally, all these things belong to him. Yingqi was reluctant to feed Dodoria a mortal being, so he naturally threw him into the liquid medical machine. After all, the intact Dodoria is of use. When Inch returned to Earth in a giant spaceship, there was a gray figure floating in midair. The figure was short and stocky, with the same physical characteristics as Dodoria. It's just that the surface of the body is wrapped in a layer of gray light. Its fat, comical face is also covered with a spell painted with arcane spells. This strange character, like the flying corpse in the mythological legend, is the same person who has just sworn allegiance to Inki. A day ago, after Inki used the liquid medical machine to cure Dodoria, he directly used the crane immortal to teach him spells and witchcraft, turning Dodoria into a puppet who can only obey orders. This is the most correct ambush operation. Otherwise, unless Inki was kicked in the head by a donkey, he would be foolish enough to believe that a guy like Dodoria who was afraid of death would follow him with all his heart. Once Dodoria secretly contacts Frieza, the fun will be great. Although Inch is not afraid of such surprises, it will obviously disrupt his entire deployment. Therefore, the best option is to turn Dodoria into a puppet completely. In addition to Dodoria, Inki also packed the pumpkin-type spaceship into the Universal Capsule. Brought it back together. The spaceship also contains a large number of ray guns, energy detectors, and light combat suits, as well as 10 precious liquid medical machines. Among them, Yingqi values the most is undoubtedly the 10 liquid medical machines. This means that he has another means of rapid treatment in his hands. Dodoria, you go to the main console to monitor the space outside the ship. As soon as you encounter any special circumstances, you will immediately sound the alarm. Quote. After Inki's order was given, Dodoria immediately flew out of the gravity cultivation room without saying a word and went to the main control console. Watching his back disappear behind the door, Inki nodded in satisfaction. This spell is really unexpectedly good. Once used, it is equivalent to having an additional robot that can't speak. And the timeliness is also quite long. I remember that before leaving, the Crane Immortal gave him a stack of charms, and also told him that a charm can last for at least 10 years. It's quite worry-free. Subsequently, Yingqi began his practice again. This time, Yingqi did not turn on the gravity system, but only took off the 6T weight jacket that had just been changed into and replaced it with a maximum weight of 10T. After putting on this last piece of weight-bearing clothing with great effort, Yingqi's combat power value instantly dropped to 16,906. The speed of blood consumption naturally intensified again, becoming 10 points per second. This value is undoubtedly very terrifying, which means that other martial artists of the same level only need to wear this 10T weight-bearing suit. If you don't last more than 2 minutes, you will be crushed to death. Yingqi estimates that this kind of self-mutilating cultivation. In this world, only a BUG-level person with high blood volume and unlimited physical strength like him can do it. In a flash, 8 days passed in a hurry. The Blue Earth is just around the corner. Just before landing, Dodoria came to the gravity training room to inform Inki. When Yingqi learned about it, he stopped cultivating. After these 8 days of hard work, he has initially adapted to the 10T weight-bearing clothes on his body, and he is no longer acting like a centenarian, but has basically reached the level of a normal 70-year-old man, and he doesn't look so awkward. And the self-mutilating and squeezing cultivation brought him more than 2,100 points of combat power improvement. Now the combat power in the load-bearing state has become 19,000. With a loud bang, the Big Mac spacecraft jolted slightly, and then came to a steady stop on the ground. Inch walks out of the hatch and discovers that the landing site is not Dr. Brive's house, but rather that the spaceship has deviated slightly from course. Eventually, he landed on an unknown island in the middle of the sea beneath him. Inki put the Big Mac spaceship in the Universal Capsule. Then he took Dodoria for a walk over the island. The scenery of this island is very beautiful. In the center of the island, there are 2 large mountains, one high and one low. The top of the summit is covered with snow, and the temperature in the south of the mountain is high, and the snow melts into water, which merges into a spectacular waterfall halfway up the mountain. The waterfall river of waterfalls stretches all the way to the shore and eventually into the sea. The low summit is gentle and overgrown with wildflowers and trees. Surrounding these 2 mountains is a vibrant primeval forest. The forest is full of ancient trees and abundant resources. The coastline is covered with green meadows. Occasionally, there are a few sparse fruit trees and a large field of colorful wildflowers. The size of the island is also quite large. Based on the length and width of the island, Inki speculated that the total should be around 100,000 square kilometers. It is equivalent to the area of 2 treasure islands. Moreover, it is a typical uninhabited island. Inki's heart was moved. Because next he plans to create a martial arts gym. The purpose of this martial arts gym is to defend the Earth and the universe at a high level. Of course, the main purpose is actually to win people's hearts. In order to use the Genki bullet to lay the foundation in the future. Yingqi is not willing to be like Sun Wukong, who has obviously saved the Earth many times. Asked the Earthlings for some vitality, but they were all refused. Then he would rather not be such an unsung hero. The location of the martial arts hall has not yet been chosen. Yingqi was originally going to be in the western capital. But after seeing the island, his mind changed. Why don't you occupy the entire island in the name of the martial arts? Anyway, the current Earth is still in the era when the enclosure can be king. Owning an island is obviously much more exciting than buying a building. After making this decision, Inji left Dodoria on the island. Returned to the western capital alone. Dr. Brive's house. Seeing Yingqi come back, Pasta, Lan Fang, and Zhou Anqi were all very happy, hugged him one by one and refused to let go. When Mr. and Mrs. Brive heard about it, they also put down what they were doing and came to visit him. Inki first expressed his gratitude to everyone for their concern, and then briefly described his journey to the universe. A few understatements, summarizing his encounter with the Frieza Legion, and the subjugation of Dodoria. Immediately after, Yingqi's voice changed and shifted the topic to the martial arts hall. I want to create a martial arts gym with the aim of bringing together the strongest people from all over the planet to defend the planet together. Now the address has been chosen, but the name of the martial arts hall has not yet been decided. So I'd like to ask you to help me think about what kind of name is appropriate. It's better to call it the Yingqi Martial Arts Hall. Pasta said without thinking about it. I think it's more imposing to call it the world's #1 martial arts hall directly. Lan Fang said. I think it's better to call it a lollipop martial arts gym. Zhou Anqi said with a serious face. Thanks for watching.